What is the most ridiculous thing you've had to explain to a grown man? Women. My mom told me I couldn't text while driving in a school zone. I had to explain to her that only applies to the actual driver, as I texted away in the passenger seat. Recently had a distant family member yell at me for texting behind the wheel. My car was not running and parked in a parking lot. He claimed that's exactly the same as texting at a red light. You can open the photocopier to get blank paper out of it. You know, you don't have to keep photocopying that one blank page you keep carrying around with you. I used to copy nothing at my previous job because it required marginally less effort than opening the drawer. When my boss asked me to cut it out, I started referring to the copy machine as the paper dispenser. He didn't think it was as funny as I did. It should also be noted, as I found out later, that the machine was a lease and we were paying per copy. I might have told this story on Reddit before, but I had to explain to a lady how sliced bread works. I used to work in a bakery that pretty much only did bread, and a lady came in and this conversation happened. Her points at a bread. Do you have that but like in a bag of slices? Me trying to be polite. Oh yeah, we slice the bread. Her, oh okay, but do you have it in a bag of slices? Me, yes, we bag it after we slice it. Her, okay, but I really need this in a bag of slices. Me, we put the bread in a machine that cuts it into slices and then we put those slices in a bag. Her, okay, but do you sell the same bread in a bag of slices? Me, let me show you. I take the bread and slice it for her and bring the sliced bagged bread back to her. She looked so excited you'd think she never saw sliced bread before. Her, yes, that's exactly what I wanted. Keep in mind that English was this woman's first language. She was just really dumb. I was flying to Australia and a girl I met in the airport asked me if I was worried about crossing the equator. I said no. Why? And she said, well, the plane flips upside down. Aren't you concerned it will crash? I couldn't even begin to explain. I had to explain to someone on our flight that there wasn't another little plane trailing us with our luggage when they looked out the window looking for said little plane. When I was tiny, I thought the luggage traveled all the way to the destination in those little cars they used to load unload. I wondered occasionally why we didn't just ride in those little cars, since they got there at the same time, but I figured it was because the plane held more people. That girls have 3 holes. I'm a nurse and had to collect urine via a catheter, but spent over an hour telling the dad that I would not be taking his daughter's virginity by doing this. I drew pictures and he still wasn't convinced. The problems here are twofold. 1. Dude's dumb. 2. Dude's concerned that his daughter's virginity was going to be taken for a medical procedure. That's weird. When you return a single item from a purchase of 13 items, you will not get refunded the entire amount of the purchase, just the amount and tax of the returned item. That the sun wasn't extra bright on the day of the eclipse. I was told to stay inside and not go outside, since the sun was too bright to look at. They still didn't believe me, even after I explained what the danger was with the eclipse. To my boss, you can't make a color copy of a black and white document. You especially cannot make a color copy of a black and white document while using a copier that only has black toner. He is 60-yo. He's worked in offices for the last 30 years. I used to hang out with one of my co-workers. Many times while driving in the traffic, she turned on her car lights every time she had to abruptly push the brakes behind another driver. She is a kind type of person, so my first thought was that she was trying to be polite and never push the klaxon. Instead, she was flashing her car lights to get the other driver attention. One day I noticed that she was flashing lights to almost every other driver that we encounter. When I asked her what she was doing, it happens to be that she did not know that tail lights turned on every time you push the brakes, and she was trying turning them on by turning on the front lights. Haha, she is 27. Where I am from, someone flashing their lights at you means you're about to pass a speed trap and they're trying to warn you. I have repeatedly tried and failed to explain to my co-worker to not eat rotting meat. She'll leave chicken out on the counter all day to defrost. B. Cook the chicken and then leave the cooked chicken out on the counter for a week and pick at it here and there. She is out with food poisoning at least once a week. I've never met someone who throws up as much as her and wasn't bulimic. She will eat her breakfast at 4 p.m. after it's sitting on her desk all day. Eggs with cheese and mayo that she picked up at 7 in the morning. Then she'll call in sick the next day. I have shown her YouTube videos of bacteria growing, sent her articles about the dangers of E. coli. She won't listen. She ate potato salad that was sitting in a hot trunk for 24 hours. She said it was liquidy and tasted weird, but she doesn't like how refrigerated foods taste. One day, when she is paralyzed from botulism, I guess I can say I told you so? What in the ever-loving frick? This one bugs me. I worked in kitchens for years and ended up with a phobia of spoiled foods. Sometimes I won't even reheat takeout I had the night before. I know that's insane. GAHHH. That is false advertisement suit versus time winner wouldn't hold up, because they're not the ones that told him he was the millionth viewer to a website and promised him a prize. That if you want baby chicks, your hens will need to get together with a rooster. This guy was married with one child. I thought he would have figured some things out. Worked with a guy probably 18-19, doing a job on a farm. He asked me what the frick is that thing. It was a chicken. He was dead serious. He had never seen a chicken before. I had a renter who was 19 and it was her first time living on her own. She didn't get that when you send a letter in the mail, you had to put stamps on the letter. It came back due to no postage. I basically had to confirm to her that she had to do this. Her response: "It must be a Canada thing because I never had to do that back home." She is Canadian from Quebec, but her parents sheltered her so much that she couldn't function on her own and thought Quebec and Canada were two different countries. When my sister was a teenager, she left out a letter that was to be mailed later. My parents found it and saw that, where the postal code was supposed to be, she had written Nancy to Victor. Someone had read out the postal code beginning with N2V for her over the phone. That if they eat a large quantity of fast food, it's not unreasonable for them to feel full and bloated, and that this doesn't constitute a medical complaint requiring a doctor's review. Too bad there's no treatment for idiocy. That Tanzania and Tasmania are separate places, and that our native Tasmanian devils don't actually look like Taz from Looney Tunes. Our native Tasmanian devils don't actually look like Taz from Looney Tunes. Childhood equals ruined. Thanks for nothing, you Macca's 75. I was sitting in the lobby of a plastic surgery center. My wife had a very difficult pregnancy and bout with cancer. Long story short, she was getting her terrible scar taken care of and I was there to support her. This woman was sitting in the lobby with me, approx 55 YO. She was asking what I did, etc. I told her I'm a NASA cop and worked at JPL, which was literally 5 miles away. She sat straight up and leaned towards me and said, "Wait, so you fly around in space and enforce laws?" I waited, because I could not tell if this woman was attempting to be funny as heck or psychotic as heck. I replied with just the laws of gravity. I was waiting for a chuckle. What I got was the woman sitting back in her seat and she said, I never knew we had guys like you." Then was called back for her appointment. You don't save more money breaking transactions up into individual items and using a 20% coupon on each one rather than just taking 20% off the whole purchase. Seriously, one transaction. It's simple math. Stop wasting our time. But if you use a 20% off coupon 5 times, it's 100% off. That human babies aren't born with their eyes stuck shut like kittens. He asked me if my 3-week-old daughter's eyes had opened yet. He was asking about the mind's eye, but clearly you haven't been taught these secrets. The difference between a solar and lunar eclipse. Wait for it. They thought one was where the sun passes between the earth and the moon. I still love my wife, but that one was a little sad to explain. That is an apocalypse. I used to be a chef a long time ago. I had to explain to this lady that you had to crack the eggs before adding them to the mixer. It was the crunchiest Caesar dressing I've ever had. Not combustible. Oh my gosh, you'd appreciate that a member of my family who was in their 40s used dish soap to clean cherries in the sink. According to those who tasted the dish she made, you could distinctly taste the dish soap. Still, for the uninitiated, you just use water. Only water. After my car was stolen and never recovered, I bought a new one. When I went to get a new plate, the girl at the DMV told me just to transfer the old one. Cue the Abbott and Costello act of me trying to explain the plate was still on the stolen car. It was never recovered either. She refused to grant me a plate because I still had one registered and it was fine that it was on a stolen car. It transfers. Took a second clerk to come over and help explain the situation. Similar thing happened with removing the insurance from the stolen car. Didn't have theft insurance. It was a pose beater. So I just went in to cancel the policy because why pay for a car that was probably a burned out husk? Same act. But so you can't make a claim you don't have theft insurance me. I know I just want to cancel the policy repeat in various ways for 10 GD minutes until she calls over manager because I'm being difficult. She smugly grins at me as I explain my situation to the manager and she says you see what I'm dealing with. He sighs, does 3 clicks of the mouse and says your policy has been cancelled, have a nice day. I left to the sounds of her loudly arguing with him. I had a similar situation when my car got stolen. We had paid for a parking permit for 6 months in advance and were told that we could get a refund if we brought the old pass back. I think eventually they accepted a police report number as proof enough. To an office junior postgraduate in engineering, after checking his work, me, in the English language, if a word starts with a Q, it is almost always followed with a U, him. Oh yeah, what about croissant? Defiant smug stare, me, sigh. To his credit, there is no U after a Q in croissant. Worked in a frame shop at a Michael's once and a lady came to ask me why we didn't sell any 10x8 tabletop frames on the sales floor because we only had 8x10 tabletop frames displayed. Wish I could share the look on her face when I showed her they could be displayed vertically and horizontally. I had to explain to a full-grown man once that women do truly, in fact, have a clitoris which produces intense pleasure for the female and that no, that was not just a tiny penis to pee out of. He was married. His poor wife. IDK what you're talking about, I love my wife's penis. I was 20 years old and covering the reception desk at a mid-sized law firm on maybe the 14th or 15th floor of a high-rise building. This attorney was apparently good at her job. From what I understood of her reputation, I didn't know her well, but this story often makes me wonder about smart and smart. On this day, as she exited the elevator on her return from lunch, she decided to voice what seemed to be a puzzle that stumped her for a very long time. I don't understand this building. Why is it, when I enter the elevator facing away from the lobby, I exit facing the lobby on the floor above? It's like the elevator turns around. I stared at her for a few seconds, contemplating time, space, creation, and the giant salary differential between our two positions, before I spoke the last words I'd ever say to her. Mom, you turn around to face the doors once you get into the elevator. You're facing the lobby when the elevator starts to move. She went out of her way to avoid me after that. I know an attorney who is, so far as I can tell, excellent at his job. He's just terrible at basically everything else, to the extent that I'm sometimes amazed he can tie his own shoes, or even remember to tie his shoes, for that matter. I lived in Asia for a while. There were multiple people in both Asia and the US who thought that the Western and Eastern hemispheres experience opposite seasons, like the Northern and Southern hemispheres do. More than once, I've grabbed the nearest round object and started saying pretend this grapefruit is the earth and this lamp is the sun. There was this girl in my French class. I had to explain that France no longer has a monarchy, that England and France are different countries, and that England and France do not share a land border. I dunno, they're on the third republic in a row now. The revival of the empire is way overdue. I wasn't very successful, but I attempted to explain this to him. Let me set the scene. On top of a mountain in Maui with a tour group watching the sunset, and I hear the guy behind me telling his kids the sun sets in the west, so that's the Pacific Ocean, so that side over there is the Atlantic. I laugh and turn around and acknowledge his hilarious joke. He was not joking. To which I reply, you know this is all the Pacific Ocean, 360 degrees around. He then rolled his eyes and kept talking to his kids. Poor things don't stand a chance. That contrary to her belief, islands are in fact not floating like big rubber boats. She was asking how with the wind and currents the islands still maintain their position without roaming the oceans like rocky icebergs. I'm ashamed to say I thought Antarctica was just composed solely of ice with no land mass, just floating around, and had to Google it after a discussion with a friend. Not my brightest moment. My boss hired an assistant for me from a strip club he had attended the previous weekend. He told her that she needed to pay attention to everything I did and then he would replace me with her. The things I had to explain: show her how to do, address an envelope, write a business email, read a contract before signing it, stay for the entirety of a client event, show up to work on time, not drink at work, not gossip at work, not have her boyfriend hang out at work all day, and more. Finally, she became so upset at how much work my job entailed, and she hadn't touched the surface, that she quit. Facebook isn't how you should be keeping up on current events. That article Janine posted is 100% bulls and Francis believes the earth is flat, so why are you listening to him anyway? But Janine wouldn't lie to me. It's like they don't think it's possible for someone to be just strong and spreading misinformation. Everybody knows everything, and anyone who is wrong about anything is a dirty liar. To a 28-year-old female native Californian whose first and only language is English, that it's a vagina and not a virgina. Should have told her it's pronounced vagina. That when you take a cash advance on a credit card, the money has to come from somewhere. This woman, late 30s, thought the cashback option at stores was a no-brainer question. Of course, if you are given the option to get $50 right there at a grocery store, why pass it up? Just a couple weeks ago I had to explain to a coworker that thunder is the sound of lightning. She walked away from the conversation angry about how stupid I was, looked it up, and apologized to me. Gotta give her credit there. Also, I work in a laboratory. This coworker is college educated. That if your app is free to download, offers no in-app products, extra functionality or levels or whatever, and you don't run any ads, your app will make $0 and you should not expect to receive any income for it. Technically, there's one more software business model that would accommodate this. If everything about it is free but users have to pay for support if they ever need it, and can't get that anywhere else, it's how a lot of open source projects make money. A girl I know thought that we don't eat chickens' eggs. She thought the eggs that chickens lay are exclusively the ones that hatch into chicks, and that the eggs we eat are just made in the factory. My overly religious mother refused to believe that meat was muscle tissue. She was convinced that meat was a separate thing that animals produced just so people could eat it, because God made them that way for our benefit. I was doing over the phone tech support and I had to explain to more than one person how to fricking plug the power cord into a wall outlet. One woman even had to ask what a goddamn outlet was. That it was safe to watch the eclipse on the television without safety glasses. I let a passing pedestrian look through my glasses at the eclipse at work. He freaked out. Had no idea what an eclipse was. That natural medicines and supplements are not necessarily safe or healthy, especially in huge quantities. Rattlesnake venom is natural. Anthrax is natural. E. coli is natural. Bubonic plague is natural. Careful, your food could have chemicals. I once tried to unsuccessfully explain to a customer that a hamburger with cheese is just a cheeseburger, but they refused to listen and insisted he got a hamburger with cheese. That the deer crossing signs on the highway weren't in fact for the deer, they were to alert the drivers. Deer can't read, but they have pictures. That hurricanes are not named according to whether they are male or female, it is just an arbitrary name. Hurricanes do not have a gender identity. Steve Jobs did not single-handedly invent the home computer, GUI, the iPod, iPhone and iPad. He had Steve Wozniak, Xerox and teams of engineers do that for him. LOL, he just walks out of his garage with a fully functional iPhone. Where the P comes out of a lady, I'm a dude, she was 33. Once had to explain to a friend that no, ancient Romans did not use cling film and an elastic band in lieu of a condom. I'm not even sure what is the worst part of that. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.